The moment my mother laughed, I knew something was terribly wrong. I had just walked through the front door carrying the pie I had spent 3 hours baking, smiling because I thought I was finally home for the big family dinner everyone had been talking about. But when I happily said, "I can't wait for the big family dinner tomorrow," my mother froze, stared at me for several seconds, and then gave a nervous little laugh. She said it was yesterday. I thought she was joking. Then I noticed the untouched plate on the kitchen counter, the flowers wilting in a vase, and the strange look passing between my parents. That was when I realized I hadn't simply gotten the date wrong. Somehow, my entire family had gathered without me, and they had never called. If you believe that family is about more than blood, and that kindness and second chances can sometimes heal wounds that years cannot, please take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Because sometimes, the person standing outside the family circle is the one who needs a little kindness the most. I had always been the organized one in our family. I kept birthdays in my calendar, remembered anniversaries, ordered flowers for my parents, and called my younger brother whenever I knew he was having a difficult week. But over the previous year, life had become complicated. I had taken a demanding job in another city, and although I tried to visit whenever I could, the distance slowly changed everything. My family still told me they loved me, but their messages became shorter. Calls became less frequent. Invitations started arriving after events had already happened. I kept telling myself it was normal. Adults got busy. Families changed. People forgot things. I never imagined they were slowly learning how to live without me. The dinner had been mentioned several weeks earlier. My mother had told me that everyone would finally be together again, and I had promised to come. Then work exploded. A major project was moved forward, and I found myself spending nights in the office and weekends answering emails. For several days, I worried that I wouldn't make it home. But when my boss unexpectedly gave me the Friday afternoon off, I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. I immediately bought ingredients for my mother's favorite dessert and drove through the night, imagining the look on her face when I walked through the door. I arrived Saturday morning, exhausted but happy. My plan was to surprise everyone at dinner. When I reached my parents' house, however, the curtains were drawn and the driveway was strangely empty. I assumed everyone was simply sleeping late. I carried my bags inside and found my mother in the kitchen. She looked genuinely startled to see me. I hugged her tightly, but something about the way she held me felt different. It was as though she was hugging someone she had missed but wasn't expecting to see. Then I made the mistake that changed everything. I mentioned the dinner. My mother looked down. She told me the dinner had been the night before. For a few seconds I couldn't understand the words. I checked my phone. I checked the calendar. I asked her what she meant. She explained that everyone had arrived Friday evening. My brother had brought his children. My aunt and uncle had come. Even my grandmother, who rarely traveled anymore, had been there. They had eaten together, taken pictures, exchanged gifts, and stayed late into the night. I felt my stomach drop. I asked why nobody had told me. My mother didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the refrigerator and pulled out a small container of leftovers. She placed it on the counter without looking at me. My name was written on the lid. I stared at it. There was enough food inside for one person. I asked whether they had saved it for me. She nodded. That tiny gesture somehow hurt more than being forgotten. Because saving one plate meant they knew I wasn't there. And nobody had come looking for me. I spent the rest of the morning pretending I was fine. I helped my mother clean the kitchen even though it was already spotless. I washed dishes that didn't need washing. I asked about my brother's children. I smiled when she showed me photographs from the previous evening. Every picture seemed to contain the same message. Everyone was there. Except me. In one photograph, my grandmother was sitting in the center of the table, smiling. My father was beside her. My brother stood behind them with his children. My mother was laughing. And there was an empty chair at the end of the table. My chair. I stared at that photograph until my eyes began to burn. Then I noticed something else. The chair had been pulled slightly away from the table, almost as if someone had expected me to arrive. I asked my mother about it. She finally admitted that they had expected me. She said everyone thought I was coming, but when I didn't appear, they assumed I had chosen work instead. My brother had apparently said I always had an excuse. Someone else had joked that I would probably arrive the next day and complain that nobody waited. I felt something inside me crack. I had spent years trying to prove that I cared about my family. Yet one missed dinner had apparently been enough for them to decide I didn't care at all. I left the kitchen and went upstairs to the room that had once been mine. The walls were still painted the same pale blue. Old photographs were still tucked into the mirror frame. But my belongings had been packed into boxes. I opened one. Inside were childhood trophies, school notebooks, birthday cards, and a faded photograph of me sitting between my parents. At the bottom of the box was a handwritten note from my father. It was dated 2 years earlier. The note said that he was proud of me. I sat on the floor and cried. Not because of the dinner. Because suddenly I understood that the real problem had started long before that night. We had all been keeping score. They thought I didn't visit enough. I thought they didn't appreciate what I did. They thought I cared more about work. I thought they had stopped caring about me. Everyone had been hurt. Nobody had been honest. That evening, I called my brother. He answered reluctantly. At first, neither of us knew what to say. Then I told him I wasn't angry about the dinner anymore. I was angry that we had allowed ourselves to become strangers while pretending everything was fine. He became quiet. Then he admitted something I never expected. He had been the one who told everyone not to keep calling me because he thought I needed space. He said he believed I was unhappy whenever I came home because I always looked tired. I told him I was tired because I was trying to build a life that would make our parents proud. He said he had no idea. Then he confessed that he had also felt abandoned. His voice broke when he explained that after his divorce, he had needed me more than he ever said, but because I was busy, he assumed I didn't want to get involved. I realized then how easily love could become invisible when people stopped speaking. My brother and I spent nearly an hour talking. For the first time in years, neither of us defended ourselves. We simply listened. The next morning, I woke to the sound of dishes downstairs. When I entered the kitchen, my father was making coffee. He looked older than I remembered. He placed a cup in front of me and sat down. Then he apologized. Not for forgetting to invite me. Not for the dinner. He apologized for something much bigger. He admitted that he had noticed the distance between all of us but had been too proud to say anything. He had assumed that families could survive anything without talking about it. Then he looked at me and said something I would remember for the rest of my life. Sometimes the people we love don't leave us all at once. Sometimes we lose them one unanswered message, one missed phone call, and one unspoken apology at a time. I couldn't hold back my tears. My father reached across the table. I took his hand. And for the first time in a long time, neither of us pretended to be okay. A few hours later, my mother came into the kitchen carrying the leftovers from the dinner. She placed the container between us. Then she smiled through tears and said that perhaps we could have another dinner. Not because anyone owed me one. Not because we needed to recreate the night I had missed. But because we had finally realized that waiting for the perfect moment to reconnect was dangerous. So that evening, we cooked again. My brother brought his children. My grandmother came downstairs slowly, laughing about how everyone was making too much food. My father burned the first batch of bread. My mother complained about it. Everyone laughed. And I realized something. The dinner I had missed had been perfect in photographs. But this one was messy. The food wasn't ready at the same time. Someone spilled a drink. The children argued over dessert. My father forgot where he put his glasses. My mother complained that nobody was listening. And somehow, it was the most beautiful family dinner I had ever experienced. Because this time, nobody was pretending. At one point, my little niece climbed onto the empty chair beside me and asked why it had been empty the night before. I looked at my family. Nobody answered. So I told her the truth. I said sometimes people love each other very much and still make mistakes. She thought about that for a moment, and then smiled. She said that meant we could fix them. I looked at my mother. She was crying. My father smiled. My brother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. And I understood that children sometimes know the simplest truths adults spend years forgetting. Love doesn't mean never hurting each other. Love means refusing to let the hurt become the end of the story. Months passed after that night. Our family didn't suddenly become perfect. We still disagreed. We still got busy. Sometimes someone forgot to call. Sometimes plans changed. But we started doing something different. We talked. We stopped assuming. We stopped keeping score. And every month, no matter how busy everyone became, we had dinner together. Sometimes at my parents' house. Sometimes at my brother's. Sometimes at mine. The empty chair disappeared. Not because we needed to erase what happened, but because we had finally learned what that chair had been trying to tell us. There is always room for someone you love. Even when they have been away. Even when they made mistakes. Even when you are angry. Even when the past is painful. And especially when it feels easier to stop trying. Years later, I still keep the photograph from that first dinner. The photograph with the empty chair. I keep it inside my desk. Not because it makes me sad anymore. I keep it because it reminds me that families aren't held together by perfect memories. They're held together by people willing to come back to the table. If this story touched something inside your heart, please don't just scroll away. Like the video, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. You never know who might be quietly feeling forgotten, unwanted, or left behind. Sometimes a simple message, a phone call, or an invitation can change someone's entire life. And before this story ends, I have one special request for you. Comment. There is always room at my table. If you believe people deserve another chance, and if you believe it's never too late for a family to find its way back to each other. Because sometimes the person we think has forgotten us is actually waiting for us to make the first move. Sometimes the apology we are waiting to hear is the apology we need to give. And sometimes the most important dinner isn't the one we planned yesterday. It's the one where everyone finally shows up today. That night, as I drove home, my mother called me. She didn't ask when I would visit again. She simply said she loved me. I pulled the car to the side of the road. And for a moment, I just sat there with tears in my eyes. Then I smiled. Because after all those years of wondering whether I still had a place at my family's table, I finally understood something. I had never really lost my seat. We had simply forgotten to save it for each other. And sometimes, all it takes to find your way home is one person brave enough to pull out the chair and say, "Come sit with us."